Welcome to Late Night Geek, the talk show style podcast. I have you saying it's a great time, not just for the men, but the women and the children too. We have a great show for you this week. A tech billionaire just announced that he will be mounting another expedition in a submersible down to the Titanic. He claims that his goal is to reignite the passions of sea exploration after the Ocean Gate tragedy last year. And you know what? I think this is a noble cause because we know less about our own oceans than we do the surface of the moon. I'm sorry, I couldn't say that with a straight face. He acts like this is some noble quest to reignite people's passions for the ocean. But we all know it's just some billionaire that wants to see the Titanic. And that's exactly what got the Ocean Gate people in trouble. Although I'm sure that the technology they're going to use in this new submersible is going to be a lot more advanced. Instead of an off-brand game controller, they're using one from a PS5. I'm sure we all remember the disturbing images that came out of that Willy Wonka event that happened in Glasgow a little while back. Well, event coordinators in the Philippines have decided to outdo it. They held a Pokemon fan event that had almost no booths, very sad decorations, and a mysterious ravioli man. Apparently there was a man wandering around eating ravioli straight from the tin, making a mess of himself, and attendees said that he, quote, smelled terrible. You know, if I had a nickel for every time a cherished childhood property was used as a ploy to scam money out of fans at a disturbing, horribly decorated, horribly run event where people felt like they might actually be in danger being there, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Recently, Mike Tyson claimed that he believes Brad Pitt slept with his wife. And do you know how I know that Brad Pitt did not sleep with Mike Tyson's wife? Because Brad Pitt's alive! I'm sorry, but I don't think Brad Pitt is stupid enough to sleep with Mike Tyson's wife! I don't think anyone is that stupid. There's been some drama surrounding the 2024 Paris Olympics. Parisians have been criticizing the Olympic Committee for claiming that the Seine River is safe to swim in. Various French politicians decided to put their money where their mouth was by swimming in the Seine River. On the day chosen for the swim, Parisians said that they were going to be pooping in the river to protest the claims. I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time getting this out with a straight face. It's such an absurd story. So they're criticizing that the river is not clean enough. So what they're going to do is poop in the river to make it grosser for when these politicians were going to swim in it. They even had a website for people who lived outside of Paris, upstream, so that they could poop in the river and it would float down at the time of the swim. You know, normally when I cover absurd stories, it is in film or television or something weird that fans are doing, but I don't even know where to go with this story. It's so absurd. Now, it is unclear on how many, if any, actually pooped in the river ahead of the swim, but my gosh! A group of scientists just showed off their newest project, putting living skin on robots. At this point, I am convinced that scientists are actively trying to bring about Skynet. Why are scientists doing this? Why do robots need living skin? I don't know if they should inspire me like Bicentennial Man or terrify me like the Terminator. The Catholic Church is venerating their first millennial saint, but the thing that has everyone excited is that he was an avid gamer. This would be the very first venerated gamer saint. Of course, this is absolutely wild. The Catholic Church venerating a famed gamer. I guess he'll be the patron saint of pwned noobs. Does anyone even say that anymore? Am I old? I'm old, aren't I? Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine appear in a new Heineken ad to cross-promote both the beer and their new movie. In the ad, Deadpool steals adamantium from Wolverine's claws in order to make a sleek new can for Heineken, resulting in Wolverine unable to pop his claws. Give me a second, I need to channel my inner keyboard warrior. Actually, Wolverine has bone claws underneath the adamantium, so even if Deadpool could somehow magically remove the adamantium from his body, he would still be able to pop 6 really cool looking bone claws from his hands. So I don't know who made this Heineken ad, but obviously they've never read a comic before. Hopefully the people over on Dropout see this and put me on actually. That would be sick. Speaking of Deadpool and Wolverine, Hugh Jackman said the hardest part about becoming Wolverine again was having to eat so much so he could bulk up for the part. Oh, look at me. I'm huge jacked, man, and I had to suffer for my art. I had to eat a bunch of food so I could be muscular and ripped and look hot on camera. Shut up, you! I'm sorry, Mr. Jackman. I've been dieting for the last 4 months. I've lost 85 pounds. I'm doing the intermittent fasting and filming this before I'm able to eat for the day, so a little sensitive about caloric intake. Also on the subject of Deadpool and Wolverine, that's right, I'm talking about this movie a lot this week because I freaking love Deadpool, and there's a lot to talk about lately. When Dune released, there was an infamous popcorn bucket that came with it that set the internet on fire. At an event, Kevin Feige announced to the world that Deadpool would be designing the bucket for Deadpool and Wolverine. And he assured people that while the Dune one was accidentally inappropriate, the Deadpool and Wolverine one would be intentionally inappropriate. And they delivered. My gosh, that's disturbing. I know a lot of people are disappointed that it's not like Deadpool's head, but let's be honest, if it's designed by Deadpool, it's gonna be Wolverine. I've heard that the tongue is textured. This popcorn bucket will be dropping at AMC on July 25th during the early screenings. So, I gotta go buy some tickets, so I'll be right back. Currently, a new anime adaptation of Scooby-Doo is in the works. And this sounds amazing, considering the last Scooby-Doo adaptation we got was called Velma, was terrible, and didn't even have Scooby-Doo in it! With this new adaptation, Fred might finally get a catchphrase. As we all know, Daphne says Jeepers, Velma says Jinkies, Shaggy says Zoinks, and Scooby says Raggy. Perhaps now, Fred will say, Nani? Apparently, Hellboy is getting rebooted again? After the flop that was the David Harbour film, I guess they've decided to bring back the character with a new actor, but somehow this actor looks so much worse. After how hard the Dave Harbour film flopped, it was clear that that was going to be a one-off movie and not a series like they were hoping. Now they decided to reboot it with a new actor and the creator of Hellboy helping make the film. However, a lot of fans are saying that it looks like a well-made fan film, which is not Hollywood level at all. And let's be honest, does that look like Hellboy to you? It looks like the most scrawny guy at the con cosplaying as Hellboy. The David Harbour film had a lot of flaws, but at least he looked awesome. And Ron Perlman was perfect. He was perfect. And Guillermo del Toro was perfect to direct. Why don't you just give Ron and Guillermo another shot? Sorry, I'm passionate about that. I love the first 2 Hellboy movies, and I would love to have a third one to complete the trilogy with Perlman and del Toro. But I don't know. Maybe this movie will be great. Maybe they're going to focus less on big CG fight scenes and more a small supernatural story. We won't know until the movie comes out. Set photos from the new James Gunn-directed Superman film have been hitting the internet, and fans are slightly concerned. From the bright colors to the looser fit, people are concerned that the costume doesn't look that great. They're comparing it to the skin-tight bodysuit of Henry Cavill's Superman. However, I don't see a problem with this suit at all. For one, this is just a set photo. We don't know what kind of scene they're filming here. This could be an action-heavy, stunt-heavy scene where the actor is going to need to be moving around quickly, doing stunt choreography, and they might have a looser-fitting suit to make that easier on the actor. This is a common practice where stunt-heavy scenes have a different suit than the hero shots. People have also criticized Nathan Fillion's Green Lantern suit. However, he's playing Guy Gardner, and Guy Gardner's suit, it actually fits the vibe pretty well. I know we have been burned by DC hero films as of late, but let's not jump to conclusions about this movie based on set photos. I, for one, actually love the brighter color scheme. It's going to give more hope and positivity to Superman. Superman is a hopeful character. That's his point. The Zack Snyder movies were so dark and gray and dull. I'm looking for a little vibrant color in my Superman movie now. Let's go back to the positivity of the Christopher Reeves films. And I think that this is the intent of James Gunn. Because Christopher Reeves' own son is going to be cameoing as a journalist in this movie. No filmmaker is perfect. Every director has flops, and James Gunn is no exception. However, he was able to take a unknown group of D-list superheroes and make one of the greatest superhero films of all time. So I say we give Superman another shot. Tonight we have something very special. There's a new movie on all streaming platforms right now called The Keepers of the Five Kingdoms. And I got to sit down with the cast as well as the writer-director, Zach Ward, about the movie. So without further ado, roll the clip. Today we have a very special interview. We have the writer, director, and cast of Keepers of the Five Kingdoms. Everyone, why don't you go around, starting with Matt, and introduce yourselves. Let everyone know your name and your character.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Sato, and I play Hopper in The Keepers of the Five Kingdoms, and I'm really excited for you guys to see it.
Hi, I'm Zach Ward, writer-director of the movie, as well as I'm in there, but I don't want to tell you which character I play. You got to find him for yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Mao. I play Patsy in The Keepers of the Five Kingdoms, and I am Uncle Chuck's granddaughter.
Hi, my name is Anna Har. I play Squirrel, aka Susan Squinowski, and yeah, I'm really excited for you guys to see the movie.
So my first question is going to be for Zach, as the writer and director of this movie. What led you to wanting to make this project?
I wanted to make something like this for years. My producing partner, Ace Underhill, and I are both huge fans of the 80s movies like The Goonies, Big Trouble in Little China, Dark Crystal, Never Ending Story. And years ago, James Hong came to us wanting to rent gear. We have a studio, Brilliant Screen Studios, that we are a full service facility. So sometimes people just come and rent things from us. And James Hong called and we started talking to him about this project. And then we got more and more involved because it just seemed awesome. And then we took off, wrote it, and worked with him on developing the story, and then got to make the movie. So kind of dreams came true.
That's really cool. So James Hong has a big role to play in the creation of this film. I know he's in it. And that actually leads to my next question to the young actors here. What was it like working with James on a movie, because he's been acting since most of your parents were even born?
Yeah.
Well, for me, James is such a legend. So to get to work with him was pretty mind blowing. I mean, I remember there were times where we would all be in kind of the cast area, goofing around, and we'd look over our shoulder and James would be singing opera for all the extras, just putting on a full-on show. And I think we all learned a lot about what it's like to be a performer and to be an entertainer from just watching James, not only on set, but just when he's hanging around.
Yeah, I love James so much. Like, I absolutely adore him. I was really nervous to work with him just because, like, we're so young, like, and we're annoying, and he's just like a Hollywood legend. So I thought, like, he was going to be away from us and not really hang out with us, but that was the total opposite. He is a big goofball, and he's, like, filled with so much energy. I don't know how he does it. Like, he was dancing, he was singing, he does, like, Elvis impersonations, and he's, like, really good at it. But working with him was just so... I love it. I adore him so much.
For me, I think working with James was extra special just because not only is he a legend in general in Hollywood, I think he is pretty much one of the first Asian American faces anyone has would have ever seen in Hollywood at this level of this many credits, playing all sorts of different characters, not just the stereotypical ones. And for me, this being like my first role in a feature film was really meaningful. And I remember when I booked this project, I thought, if I do nothing else for the rest of my career, I will still be satisfied because I got to work with James Hong. And not only that, I got to play his granddaughter, which was really special for me.
So, Zach, did you show the cast any of those old movies that inspired you? Goonies and maybe Christmas Story. That's got a great kid cast in it.
I don't know if I did, guys. I think we talked about them. I mean, they'll remember this better than I will because, as you said, I'm really old. But I mean, we talked about it, but I didn't want them to get caught up in the style of those films from those decades because sometimes acting does not translate. And the thing is, they're an amazing cast. They're incredibly talented, and they're also they're young people, so they're of their age, and their acting technique and style can lend itself to the type of film that I'm making. But I also want their innate talent and their perspective on the role. So I'm not trying to have them fit into somebody else's mold. I wanted them to be them. That's why they were hired. That's why they got the roles, because they're great. I know that we referenced and I talked about it to a certain degree, but I kind of felt like I didn't want to influence their choices too much by showing them previous films. I wanted them to come in fresh, and they did, and they blow it away.
I noticed that you guys are doing a lot of awesome stuff. I noticed Zach also mentioned Dark Crystal and some of these films that have like a lot of puppet work. I noticed there's a lot of great monster effects in here. I'm really curious for you as young actors who, like Michelle, you mentioned this is your first role, and I've seen some of you have had other roles before, but you're all very new to the industry. What was it like being thrown into a project with crazy monster effects and it looked like wire work as well?
We were really lucky to be able to work on this. I mean, the film, getting to work with green screens and, like you said, monsters and all that, like till this day, I don't know if I have done that again. So I'm so lucky to have done it. And yeah, I mean, what do you guys think?
I mean, yeah, I'm lucky. I think we're very lucky. I mean, it was so much fun just seeing all the practical effects and the puppetry. It was, and I've known Zach for a long time, so getting to work on this specific project with him was just really fun. And I think about it all the time, how we filmed this movie and how many memories I made and how much fun it was for me and all of us. And yeah, like Matt said, we are very, very lucky and fortunate to experience this. I mean, it was so much fun. I would come home and just like show people like, oh, look at this, like show my mom and everything. So yeah, very fortunate to have worked on this.
Thank God we didn't have to work on all those cheesy, crappy, really bad, poopy caca shows before we got to do a cool one. And then you're like, wait a second, I did some of those. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the reality, Jake. The reality is, if you're an actor, your job is to work, and not everything you get is going to be golden. One of my first movies here in Los Angeles when I moved over from Toronto was called Star Hunter, and it is horrible, and I'm horrible in it. And if you get a chance to watch it, please do, because my hair is gorgeous. But everything else about it is craptacular. But I will say, you just like Andy Dufresne at the end of the Shawshank Redemption, you have to crawl through miles of poop to get to the good stuff. And then these guys, I'm very grateful for them for seeing it this way, that they saw this movie as the good stuff, because it was a lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun. So what Matt is saying is, yes, you have to struggle to get there, but it makes the process all the more worthwhile. So when it really pays off, and I'm very grateful to them because I think it really did.
Yeah, and honestly, this project looks really ambitious. I mean, I'm really curious about these monster effects. I know John Bailey was one of the monsters, but I'm really curious, what studio did you go with to actually make the costumes and the masks and the puppets?
That took a whole bunch of different artists and technicians. Jerry Constantine, Todd Tucker, Terry Sandin, as well as working with Illusion Industries, and pulling in a lot of favors and asking help from a lot of friends. Lori Halleck was amazing. Christine Costanza was fantastic. So it really took a village, and you had to work together to figure out how to make it. You mentioned John Bailey. He's amazing. He plays the Woo Witch, and Christine Costanza and Lori Halleck and myself, we came up with how to make his fake boobs, because we wanted to give him big, long, funny fake boobies. And so we got nylon stockings and filled them up with rice. And then I wore them. You remember that, Anna? I was wearing them around the set when we had you at Michelle's house. And then I was in the back and I had wrapped the nylons around my neck with the rice. And I had them around here and a big sweatshirt. And I was running around and I had these big floppy boobies. And, and I knew it was working when everybody looked and laughed. I'm like, yep, that's perfect. That's the right size of the big floppy boobies. It doesn't have to be difficult. It just has to be a group effort so that everybody works together to make it happen. So yeah, it was a village. It took a village.
Michelle, we missed your answer because you cut out there for a second. Let me see. What was that question again? They were all talking about
The monsters.
Dang, what were we talking about? Oh, what was it like working on a film with all the creature effects and special effects? And it appeared to be there may have been some wire work as well. Couldn't tell from the trailer if it was composite or wire work, but very ambitious project. What was it like being a new actor and working on something like that?
I mean, it was so much fun. And I think at the time when I was working on it, because it was my first film that I'd ever worked on at this level, and I didn't realize how special that would be, kind of like what Matt said. Since then, I've never been on a set again that was that creative, that much ingenuity about how to get certain shots done, putting together, combining like practical effects and special effects. And I really do think like puppetry, I don't want to sound pessimistic about the industry, but I feel like it's a dying art. Like people are relying on going the easy way. They forget the magic of that, I feel like. And to be able to bring that back in 2024 for audiences feels really special to me. So I'm really glad that I got to be a part of this project.
I know I love seeing real good practical effects in movies, not to, belittle the work of very hardworking CG artists, because it's a very difficult field as well. But there is just something magical about having that real life puppet on stage. The actors, you can see it in their performance. It really is magical, and it's really cool that you guys have really worked hard to bring that to the screen.
Yeah, I think Michelle, were you there on stage when we were doing the stuff with the tortoise?
I didn't get to be there for that, but that made it extra special when I got to finally watch the movie. It was like, whoa.
Yeah, Anna, I know Matt actually came over and was helping out with crew for that. And then Anna, I think you and your dad dropped by when we were shooting that, remember?
Yeah, and then I also saw like different versions of him like while he was being created. So I kind of from the start to the finish and see the outcome was really cool. And then see the final result.
There's an amazing thing when you get to put a creature in the same room as the actor who's working with them. And yes, there can be, so there's a large puppet in this film. There's a number of them, but there's a lot of prosthetics, but the large puppet is a tortoise, and it has animatronic eyes. And then in post, I adjusted the eyes with eye tracking and changed the color of the eyeballs and the movement of the pupils so that it could give more story specifics, reactions the way I wanted. Like a human being's eyes look and react and add to the comedic timing. But there's this amazing scene where James Hong is talking to a tortoise puppet, and it's voiced by George Takei. I mean,
what?
It's so cool. It's so
okay. That is a duo
cool.
that I know. Oh my gosh!
Oh, you didn't know? You should see the movie. It's pretty good.
And it is.
I
one of my
favorite.
Trust
me, I'm gonna see it. Oh gosh, this movie.
There's something so old school cool about it, and then how many puppeteers it took jammed underneath the stage with their arm rammed up and moving the head, and another person being the arms, and they'd have to lie down like this to get their arms up. And then you'd have to take a break and you'd be like, are you guys okay? And they'd be like, it's so hot. It's so hot. Like, and everybody came together to make that moment work. And then you edit it and then somebody watches it and they believe. And that's magic.
Man, that is so awesome. It sounds like this tortoise is your Job of the Hut, just with how complicated it was.
He's my Yoda. He's my Yoda.
He's your Yoda. Oh,
Yeah.
that probably philosophically and thematically probably makes more sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
So
can we talk about,
we're getting towards the end here, but I want to go through and see what was everyone's favorite part about working on this movie. What will you take away years from now about this project and how it affected you as a performer or a writer director in Zach's case?
I would say for me, I learned so much from working on this. And there was something that Zach and I would always talk about, and it's how the film has a very specific look to it and a very specific way that everything comes together. And while we were on set, we would say, no, that's not quite it. And it could be something as simple as where a book is placed on the shelf. And then he would move the book, and then we'd be like, that's Patsy. That's the Keepers of the Five Kingdoms right there. And I think when it came to acting performances, set design, all of that, there was an aspect of like, yes, that's our movie. And there was one line that I had specifically where I turn around, and I guess I don't want to give it away, but I look at the witch and I say, oh my God. And Zach was like, no, give me more. And I was like, oh my God. And he was like, Matt, give me more. And then we go, oh my God. And it was just this crazy scene. And we did one take of it like that. He said, all right, we got it. And then I remember seeing it in the screening, and I was like, wow, that's Patsy. That's the Keepers of the Five Kingdoms.
Yeah, that's my favorite part.
Who's next?
I'll go next. I think for me, working on this project, working with Zach, a huge takeaway for me is to never stop having fun. Like the moment you stop having fun in this industry and doing this job, it's like, might as well not do it, because that's where 90% of the magic comes from. I think doesn't matter what genre, doesn't matter what style. And I just think that there's so much heart in this movie. I really think it's worth a watch for everyone who feels like, they want to reconnect with their childhood fun and like wonder and the beauty of just cinema and people coming together. It takes a village to create something like this. And then it's not lost on me how lucky I am to be able to be kind of like front and center of it. Really special. So I just want to say thank you to Zach, and yeah, just happy to be here.
I think definitely working on this film is just an experience that I will like never forget in my entire lifetime. Like I can't wait to tell my kids this. Like I had so much fun on set, and my character Squirrel, like I got to play with her a lot. And typically I play a lot of like darker roles or more dramatic roles. For me, this was like one of my first like family friendly roles, and I just had so much fun with it. Like Zach kind of gave me this character, and he was like, okay, make what you want with it, go ahead, run with it. And I had so much fun, and just like being on set with Zach, because I'd known him for a long time, and then getting to film a movie that was just fun and family friendly and exciting, and then getting to meet all these amazing people like James, Matt, Michelle, Marissa. Like I think about it like constantly, how lucky I was and how lucky I am. And now it's a completed piece, and all the pieces are formed together, and they created this like fun little cute family friendly movie. And I'm just so happy with it. I think about it all the time. I love it. So thank you, Zach, again.
It was like summer camp, honestly.
Yeah, we did like a lot of stuff on set. We had a lot of trouble, but it's fine. It's fine.
I'm very happy with the film. It's a labor of love. One of my goals was to make a movie that Bob Clark would have been proud of. Bob Clark, as you know, is the director of A Christmas Story. And there's just something, Bob was a brilliant director and a fantastic mentor to me. And the idea that he was so kind and patient to me when I was a kid on set, I wanted to try and reciprocate that and push that forward. Sometimes I can be a real jerk, but that's my job. On the flip side, I think these kids came together and made a film that has a lot of weight. Like, it's been amazing to see the response that people have to these characters. They really identify with Patsy and with Squirrel and with Hopper, and they feel like they're real people that they can connect to. I'm very proud of the film. I'm proud of the cast. I think they kicked the snot out of it, and I think it's a hilarious, fun, sweet, kind, challenging, exciting film that really takes an honest step when it comes to delivering entertainment and family values without ever preaching. If you're looking for something that's inclusive, this is it. If you're looking for something that tells you how to trust your friends and family, this is it. It's a lot of fun, and I'm very proud of everybody involved in it, and I'm glad that they trusted me.
Also, let's give Zach a big round of applause because he literally put his blood, sweat, and tears into this movie. This movie was his baby. So
Thank you.
Great job, Zach. Yes.
Come a long way from Scott Farkas.
Yeah, it's been a day or two. Thank you, guys.
Scud's still in there though.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite one was when Matt was on it. You guys remember this? So Matt's dad is awesome. He and I get along really well, and this was one of Matt's first movies ever. And I think it was your first film, actually.
Yep.
And he's like 17, perfect gangly kid, and he kept on messing with his hair. And I was like, I walked over, and this is very inappropriate. I was like, "Listen, princess, if you touch your hair again, I'm gonna shave your skull and glue it on your ass and make you walk on your hands. Are we good? Because I'm done." And I looked at his dad, and his dad was like, "That's the way to do it." Like that. And then Matt goes, "Okay, all right." I'm like, "Great, we got it." And that's kind of the family we got to create on this thing. It was awesome. To have this be part of these people's lives and watch them grow and continue forward is a huge honor for me.
Yeah.
It sounds like the behind the scenes were just as fun as the story.
Oh yeah.
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 You all had a really great time.
Yeah.
I remember that from you all got to reminisce. I want to reminisce for a second because, like I said, this isn't my first time interviewing Zach. I got to interview him when I was fresh out of high school, and I was so unprepared for that interview. And I got the full Scott Farkas in that interview because I was stammering. I was like, nervous. This was before I had a smartphone, so I couldn't do any research before going into it. And he let me have it. But by the end of it, I knew that it was all in good fun. And the teasing and the jabs were all for the sake of humor. And it was a great interview. Today, it is one of my favorite interviews I ever did. And I want to thank you for letting me do this one as well, because this has been a lot of fun.
It's a pleasure, and thank you for forgiving me. I'm glad you got over the abuse.
Well, everyone, it is that time of the show where you all promote yourselves a little bit. Why don't we go around the room and let people know where they can find you, follow you, and know all about your socials?
All right, I'm Matt Sato. Thank you guys for watching the interview. Don't forget, The Keepers of the Five Kingdoms, available on all VOD platforms. You can find me on Instagram at Matt Sato.
Zach Ward, Keepers of the Five Kingdoms is on Amazon, iTunes, Google Play, Vimeo, Vudu, and your local cable subscriber. You know, when you scrub down and you're looking for TV shows, and on DirecTV it's like between 100 and 200. It's like, while in theaters now, press the button. There we go. And you watch the trailer. If you want to follow my socials, is Total, Total, Zach, Z-A-C-K, Ward, W-A-R-D, for Instagram and for Twitter. And I will never ask you to do anything about Bitcoin. So if you see that, that is a scammer, and report them. Protect your information.
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Anna Har. You can find me at Anna Har Official on Instagram. The Keepers of the Five Kingdoms is now out on all streaming platforms.
Hey guys, I'm Michelle Mao. My Instagram is Michelle for Breakfast, and you can now watch Keepers of the Five Kingdoms on all available on-demand VOD platforms, as well as your cable and satellite providers. If you scroll down, you can find it. I hope you enjoy.
That was awesome, everyone. Thank you so much for being in this interview and talking about the movie. I cannot wait to go and watch it with my family. Have a wonderful night, everyone, and thank you again for being here.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
I love you all.
Bye.
Love you guys.
Love you. Bye.
See ya.
That's so cute. Aw. Mwah, 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 mwah.
And we're
Bye.
Nerds. Bye, nerds.
Thank you again, Zach and Cast, for being on the show. Keep Us of the Five Kingdoms is available wherever movies are streamed today. And now it is time for our special guest, The Haunting Season. He is a content creator on all the different platforms and a documentarian. He focuses on horror films and their critiques and their analysis. So without further ado, let's welcome on Joshua, The Haunting Season.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going good. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Great. Thanks for coming on the show. Let's start off by the same question I ask every time. How did you get started on making content?
Well, I am a filmmaker by trade. I came up in New York City as a freelancer. I went to school for musical theater, which is fun and weird. But I didn't want to be an actor by the time I graduated. And I had always had a camera and I was always editing things. My brother and I would make music videos and that sort of thing. And so in 2013, I was working at a multi-channel network that focused on YouTube. And my friend and I noticed that there wasn't really a whole lot of horror that was happening on YouTube. And we were like, well, what if we kind of got into that? And we bounced around some ideas. And I said, I have some personal stories from high school that are pretty scary. What if I just tell them as ghost stories? And so we did that, and it pretty much took off overnight. And we did that. Oh gosh, I wrote a new scary story every Friday for 2 years until I got burnt out and I made new connections, and the whole freelancing stuff started to take off, and I moved across the country. I went through a divorce, and so I did it for 2 years, got burnt out, didn't do it for a long time. And then the company that I work for now, we do agency work in rare diseases. And but we're all freelance filmmakers from the start, that started this company together. And we were like, okay, now that the agency's running itself, how do we get our foot back in the door with like entertainment proper? And I was like, well, I used to do this haunting season thing. So we brought it back as a podcast, and then TikTok started taking off. And that's where the whole thing kind of like turned into something.
Almost every single person I've interviewed so far has gone to school for something creative. It's crazy that you went from musical theater and now you're making, content about horror films and freelance documentary work. I'd love to hear more about that freelance work you did. You said that you focus on rare diseases. What does that look like? What is that all about?
Yeah, so that's actually my full-time job, which it started as freelance back in New York, but I moved out to Los Angeles to start this company with some friends. We're called Believe Limited, and we do entertainment that creates change in the world. And we got our foot in the door with hemophilia because our CEO has hemophilia, and we started making content for people to help them adhere to their medication, to help them feel proud of who they are despite what condition they're born with. And that has branched out into many different rare diseases and cancers and blood disorders and all that stuff. So what I do as a day job is I'm the creative director at the company, and I help manage the look and the feel and the tone of everything from the conception of the project all the way through the final product.
Wow, that is really fascinating. I know sometimes when someone has a rare disease that not a lot of people know about, it can be very hard and you can feel very alone. So it's really awesome that you're bringing those things to the forefront. My mother and a lot of my family members have something called polycystic kidney disease, which is basically cysts grow on your kidneys until they stop functioning. And even though it's actually more of a common disease than people would think, not a lot of people talk about it. And so it's one of those things that doesn't get a lot of attention. So that's really cool that you guys are out there doing that.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's a stigma around rare diseases in general. I think people feel shame because they have them, and people feel judged, even though they may not have expressed that they live with any sort of condition. There's still a feeling of society judges people who are not normal, and I think we're breaking those barriers down as a society in more than just rare diseases, but in the LGBTQIA plus communities, and in when we're talking about race and when we're talking about culture. I feel like we're making progress, but it's important to be out there and advocating and saying things out loud so that people know that they're not alone. And that's the most important thing. Especially working in the horror industry, as my kind of side hustle and my hobby, I meet so many people who are dealing with mental health issues. Horror is a fringe community. Before we had social media, and especially before we had TikTok, a lot of us felt alone and like we were the freaks, on the fringe. And what we're realizing now, not just like individually that there are so many more of us, but also the events that are happening in different communities that support this culture and support us as like the weirdos. Those are air quotes, heavy, heavy air quotes around weirdos. My grandmother told me, we're not weirdos, we're just different, but I like the term weirdos, so I use it. But these community events are popping up all over the place, and I think it's because small businesses are now noticing like, hey, we're weird too, and like we want to support you too. I don't know if this is coming across right.
yeah, no, I totally get that. So yeah, it's interesting that you connect that to the horror, and in horror, a lot of times, especially mainstream horror, mental health and disease can always kind of be the path in which the evil encroaches on the world. How do you find that balance of, okay, well, we don't want people who have these disorders and conditions to feel stigmatized, while also a lot of horror can do that, can kind of create a stigma based around that. Where does horror play its role in helping to uh, destigmatize those kinds of things?
I think that's a really important question and one that we need to be asking all the time. I like to, all the projects that I get involved in, I like to say it's horror that creates change because, one, it stems back to my career in rare diseases, but two, I don't feel like there is a whole lot of room for horror movies that don't have any sort of meaning or purpose behind them, that are just built to be scary. Those are usually the ones that flop, and they flop for a reason because people go to films to see themselves in the films. And yeah, so I think what's really important when watching a film for me is, did it bring me joy? And even Terrifier 2 brought me joy. Even the most brutal films, there are ways of them bringing joy into your life. And then is there a message behind this? Is there a reason for talking about this film or for making this film? And if either of those questions can't be answered, then they're not going to be films that make it into my collection.
You mentioned horror films flopping because they don't mean anything. What about the horror films that we see the first or second movie in the series that really is impactful? Something like a Friday the 13th or a Halloween or a Paranormal Activity. What happens to these series that causes them to just turn into hot garbage?
I love that, especially Nightmare on Elm Street. It truly is, the whole franchise is just hot garbage, but for some reason it works just because we love Freddy so much, and because he was such an icon in the 80s. But what happens, and specifically with that one, I know it just was taken over by industry and people who are looking to make money. And so you never have the same directors, you never have the same vision or any sort of continuity. And even the third or the fourth one, the production studio started making it without a director, and then they couldn't find a director who wanted to work on a film that was being made without a director, and they hired this random person to do it. And that's one of the weirder and movies that just doesn't really make much sense, but it's still fun. And there's camp, and camp can sometimes be a really great way of bringing joy to something. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like a lot of franchises suffer from yeah, being franchises, and that's exactly what happens. Is you get individual stories sold out to individual people, and there's something you see it with Alien too. Um, because every one of those movies is totally different, tells a totally different story, uses some of the same characters even, and they're just not consistent, but they're all fun and there's stuff going on. I'm really excited for the Fede Alvarez one that's coming out because I love his films. And it looks like he's going to harken back to like the original and pay respect to it. And that's where I get into like the idea of the requel or the idea of the sequels that are like love letters to the originals. I always see those as like fan fiction as opposed to part of the actual canon, which makes it easier for me to enjoy them, I think.
Yeah, that was one of the things that when I rewatched Resurrection, Alien Resurrection, um, I had heard this rumor, and I don't know if this rumor is true or not, but Joss Whedon was part of the writing on that one, and it was told to me that he wrote it as a self-referential parody of the series, basically a parody of what the series had become ever since the second one did so well, and then the third one was awful. And then the director they got, who I believe is the same guy who directed Amelie, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's the same guy. That he didn't understand the humor of it, so he directed it straight. He
Mhm.
directed it as just another horror film, another thing in the series. But when you rewatch Alien Resurrection with the frame of mind that this was written to be a nudge nudge wink wink parody of the previous films, I think it actually really holds up. I think that it's actually funny and a lot more enjoyable. I don't know if you've ever heard that rumor as well, and I've had a hard
I
time finding
haven't.
Joss Whedon confirming that. And I know that Joss Whedon is kind of a name that we don't speak of anymore because of
Yeah,
his
he's problematic.
behavior on, a lot of movies. But it's fascinating to see how the creative intent can really reframe once you learn that creative intent.
Yeah, I watched that one. I have it right up here. I have the Alien Collection on VHS, and I watched that one for the first time maybe like 2 years ago and immediately loved it. Like, it's one of my favorite in the whole franchise. I think for me, it's like Alien 1, Alien 4, Prometheus, and then I start to get into the other ones, which is funny. Most people have Aliens as their, like, perfect one, but I don't know. It's definitely fun, but I don't think it's as good of a movie. There's something about that Alien Resurrection that is like so special. It's like campy. It really does feel, and maybe this is because so much time has passed, and maybe people who were offended by it when it first came out were looking for something a little more edgy. But it does feel like it's poking fun at itself, or at least it's self-aware, you know.
Yeah, it's just so different in tone. That first movie so claustrophobic and slow and it lets scenes breathe. And then the second one is basically just an action film. I mean, I would almost not even classify it a horror. I'd classify it
It's very
a
James
thriller.
Cameron. Yeah.
Yeah, it's I really like Aliens. I love the feel of Alien. I love the creep factor of it, and you never really get a good look at the alien until the end, and then the next one they're immediately fighting thousands of them, and I
Yeah.
felt like that kind of undercut the impact that the first one had. Not that I don't think that a sequel can ruin the original,
No.
but it doesn't have
Not
the
even a
same
remake
impact
can
the
ruin
original.
the original. The original just exists, and everyone needs to calm down.
Yeah. Like when people talk about like the Ghostbusters reboot, which I don't think that movie deserved the hate it got. I am a huge Melissa McCarthy fan, Kristen
Oh,
Wiig fan,
yeah.
Kate McKinnon fan.
The movie was
Kate McKinnon,
hilarious.
I think, carries that entire film. I think she is just an amazing comedian and actor,
Yeah.
and especially in that role. Um, And then again, I'm not a fan of kind of what they did with Leslie Jones' character. I felt like they didn't give her much depth, which really bugged me
Yeah.
because you have, the original cast of characters are these great characters. All the other, Kate McKinnon's the only character with any depth or character of her. And I do wish that movie had been received better. The effects are just gorgeous. The
Mhm.
ghost designs. No one talks about the ghost designs in that movie.
Yeah, I
And
mean, a
even the
lot of people
story.
were just angry that it was women, which doesn't really make any sense because it's usually boys, not men, but boys making that argument and boys who want to be with women. So it really doesn't serve them to have these like really sexist opinions. I find the whole thing like nauseating, but also a little bit entertaining because I know it's just like all these basement boys. But yeah, I love that movie, and I loved Afterlife because I love
Oh,
that they
yeah.
brought back all the practical effects. Like obviously some of it's CGI, and you're gonna get that nowadays, but like the
Yeah.
truly magical films of like the late 90s, post Jurassic Park, but pre Lord of the Rings, where they really figured out how to marry practical effects with CGI in a way where you get a little bit of both. Like Men in Black the other night I watched. Um, hadn't seen it in maybe 10 years. It holds up. It's got some cheesy
Oh, yeah.
CGI, but it's only because it's the like 5% of what they couldn't do practical, or yeah, it's probably more like 15 or 20, but that they physically couldn't do practically, that they just but they had the imagination, and so they went there. And I love that. I think nothing needs to be exclusively practical effects, but when you can marry the two together, it's magic.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the things about like the bug at the end. The when we finally see Edgar's final form,
Mhm.
it's kind of cartoony, but in a
Yeah.
realistic way. And I think that they leaned into that with the CG. They didn't try to make this photoreal cockroach. They made, and a lot of the alien designs, especially when they use CG, are like that. And I think that that really lends to the strength of the series. And obviously, the squid baby, the dude in the head, there's so many great practical effects.
Yeah.
You're right, it's the marriage of practical and digital. We have these people who are practical effect purists, but you're never going to get a movie that's all practical effects probably
Not
ever again,
anymore anyway. Yeah.
because it's not feasible. And then I think another movie that really married practical and CG well was The Force Awakens.
Mm.
There are
Yes.
scenes in that movie I could not determine, is that CG or is that a puppet? Like when Finn has come out of the desert and he sees that big hippo looking thing and
Oh,
he goes to
yeah.
drink the
And
water.
he's drinking from the
I
water
couldn't
and
tell
he
if
gets
it
nudged.
actually had what?
Yeah, I'm just agreeing. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I couldn't tell that giant hippo thing was CG or if it was a practical puppet. It was so cool.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love that movie for exactly that reason. It brought back the magic of Star Wars in a way that none of the in between films had done since, episode 6.
Yeah. And it's I think horror is one of those places that has really kept practical effects alive. I mean, so many films today, especially the indie stuff, love to get back. I haven't actually seen the Terrifier films. I've seen scenes, and you can tell that those movies they're so visceral and they're using practical effects so heavily. But there is something to be said about the CG fest. What is your opinion of movies like Sharknado that are entertaining because they're so bad, and then they understand that they're bad, and because that's all CG. There's nothing practical in Sharknado except for maybe a ocean shot of a shark swimming by. What's your thoughts on the stuff that is schlocky on purpose?
I think it's fun, and I think it's people getting to express themselves on a budget that works for them. I think there's room for everything in the horror genre. And I know that there are films that I won't watch because they're what I deem to be made to be harmful to other people. But there are also films I haven't watched, so I can't pass that much judgment on them. I'm talking about things like a Serbian film, which, you know, people love to drop in the comment section. You're not a true horror fan because you don't only talk about Serbian film. I don't know if I can curse on here, but that I feel passionately about the people who are like Serbian film movies buffs. So I don't know. Maybe all encompassing, maybe not, but I mean, there's so much room for everybody to express themselves in a creative way. And I just think, I don't know, there's so much positivity in the horror genre as well. I've strayed from the question. I don't know if I'm actually answering it.
It's a complex subject. You know, you gotta talk about stuff. And I think Serbian film does kind of lend to kind of that idea of where do we draw the line with horror? You know, a lot of people are willing to watch someone, get torn to shreds in 3D by a giant train covered in razor blades. Talking about, Saw 3D. But then some of the stuff in Serbian film, I'm like, why would you even want to put that simulated on camera? I've never been a big fan of it. I don't think you have to be a true horror fan to enjoy it. I think that it's one of those films that it feels like they're trying to find how far they can get away with.
Yeah,
They kind of look at these like Cannibal Holocaust that pushed the boundaries to the point where the director had to show up in court and prove that people are still alive. And I had a lot of friends in film school that were obsessed with that movie, and I just was like, I don't know why you'd even want to watch that simulated.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, a lot of art is someone working through their own issues, and there is always going to be a level that becomes harder to understand. I don't know any of the backstory behind a Serbian film or Cannibal Holocaust. I do understand pushing the boundaries, and I think that's important because with Terrifier, there's a scene where it was too much for me. It left me feeling traumatized in the original Terrifier because I felt like that film, um it didn't come out, the finished product felt like abuse against women for the sake of it, and I was
Mhm.
really against that film, and so I didn't go see Terrifier 2 in the theater, and I was holding off for a really long time, and finally I was curious and I went and watched it, and it seemed like the director took that and made changes and enhanced what they were going for, and Terrifier 2 is actually a fantastic movie.
Mhm.
Um, so, I think there's definitely room for people to experiment and push the boundaries. That's what I was getting to. Was that there's a scene in the original Terrifier movie where he cuts a woman in half with a chainsaw, and you see it. And I feel like if it weren't for scenes like that, we wouldn't have gotten the chainsaw kill in Studio 666, which is super campy and schlocky and fun. And you're like kind of cheering and clapping as opposed to feeling like you're watching something you shouldn't see. And I feel like because films like Terrifier push the boundaries, then horror comedies or other horror films that have a little bit of a lighter tone or a little bit more thought out get to do things that you wouldn't normally see.
Yeah. I know I've always wanted to actually make a horror film. I've written a couple scripts, and I it just seems like such a daunting task because you gotta find that line of you're putting really horrible things to camera, but how do you make it a commentary on those horrible things? I think Cabin in the Woods does a good job of that. Again, Joss Whedon, I hate having to bring him up, but
I know.
but he has some great films in his
It's
repertoire.
separating
Gotta
the art
separate the
from the
artist from the
artist.
artist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just I'm more of a lighthearted person, and I do like adding some darkness to levity. And so it's just I applaud people who are able to make horror films and walk. So you have to walk so many tightropes at once with that. Where do we go with the violence and not make it relish in the violence? Where do we have the villain do something awful, but also you're not supposed to be rooting for the villain? Or maybe you are supposed to be rooting for the villain because the people he's killing are horrible. There's just so many variables you have to walk with horror. I think it's a really hard balancing act to achieve.
That actually brings me back to Saw and why I love the Saw franchise. Not all the films, but why I love the series is because uh is his name John Kramer? The bad guy, Jigsaw,
Yeah.
he has a purpose and he truly believes in that purpose. He's like Thanos in a lot of ways, where he believes that by doing these horrible things to these horrible people, he can rehabilitate or at least teach them a lesson or at least like get some vengeance on the world and make the world a better place somehow. And even if he's wrong, he still believes it, and so there's a depth to that character and there's a purpose for the film, and it makes you ask questions and it makes you leave the theater wondering, you know, is it right, is it wrong, where's the line, is it in the gray, is it not in the gray? It just opens a lot of conversations, and that's why I think it's so important in the work that I do, in the work that I'm going to be doing this year, to focus on how does this create change? How does this open up conversations like that? I have a short film that I'm going to be producing in the cinematographer on, that I'm shooting in October, and then I'm working with a buddy on a feature where I'm going to be a creative producer and just help guide them in elevating the whole thing from beginning to end, kind of like what I do at work as creative director. Um, and that's the majority of the meetings we have, is me pushing back on like, why is this happening, why does it need to happen, how is that making a statement, you know, and making sure that nothing in there is there just because it's cool. Like there can be more to it than that.
Yeah. I think that's important. I think that's something a lot more productions need. I think that, you know, when you like look at something like the Star Wars prequel trilogy, it's so obvious that no one was there telling George Lucas that. A talented, you know, filmmaker, but no one saying why. Why is this happening? What does this serve? And I think that he had that in the original trilogy, and I think that that's a really important position for someone to have, is to be an outside perspective, a kind of a devil's advocate. Why are you doing this? What's the purpose?
Yes, and during the Oscars, the writer of American Fiction, when he gave his acceptance speech, mentioned like we don't, and I wholly agree with this. We don't need like 5 or 6 $250 million films. We need like $110 million films, because when you get on that level, when you're talking Marvel movies, when you're talking these huge, enormous budgets, a lot of times that gives so much power to the executives, who are then going to be looking at numbers, be looking at AI, statistics, and all this stuff to formulate a movie that can make money, as opposed to making art that can actually benefit the people who are going to watch it.
Yeah. I do, while I'm a huge Marvel nerd, Star Wars nerd, I do miss the days where you just had a movie that you went and just enjoyed the story. Everything's just been so about spectacle. It's funny we're talking about horror film and
Yeah,
critiquing.
well, and
Oh,
this year
some
is
of
a
it's
great year.
spectacle, but in horror it can be subtle and small.
Yeah. Well, and just even outside of horror, like this year in films has been absolutely extraordinary. I'm pulling up my letterbox right now because I've watched so many films this year that have just been incredible for me. At Challengers, I saw this weekend. I had no desire to see it at all, and it blew my mind. I thought it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed Abigail. Abigail had so many character moments where you learned so much about these individual characters and really started to care about them. And it was also super gory and really fun and violent. Um, what else? Oh, Civil War left me absolutely sobbing in tears at the end, with overwhelmed with anxiety. But it wasn't just for the sake of shock and abuse. It's asking questions about the future of our country. I thought that was brilliant. Monkey Man was brilliant. Again, just like a really cool John Wick action movie that I didn't realize would talk about the trans community in the way that it did. Loved that one. The first Omen I thought was really fantastic. Like this year is crushing. You'll never find me. I could, this could be another 25 minutes of me listing movies that I've seen this year, but there are so many great films coming out right now, of a scale of budgets it's making me really encouraged for the future of filmmaking. Like maybe somebody's listening amidst all of these AI conversations, like post strike. And I know that work isn't back to the way it used to be. And I know a lot of people are. I just heard that the Writers Guild, their slogan right now is "Survive to 25" because it's so hard for people to get jobs. They're like, if we can just get to 2025, things will go back to normal. That's messed up. We need to fix that. But I'm proud of the work that they've done on these films that are coming out now that were made in the last year or two, and are finally hitting distribution because they rule, and we need to keep going in that direction.
I know it's been hard with coming out of film school in 9 years ago now, and it felt like film was kind of booming, and then it just dropped off. Especially I'm in the San Francisco area. It just dropped off. One, San Francisco made it hard for crews to film. And then it just felt like everything moved to Atlanta and everything became a big budget. There wasn't a lot of room for a small new filmmaker, especially in this area. And I have liked seeing how social media has sort of opened the door to allow new creators who would never have been noticed before, make a space for themselves. Obviously, you built a whole career off, YouTube and now TikTok and being independent. And I do like where we are in film right now. Of course, my daughter was born last year, which meant I have not seen that many movies this year. And it feels like it's a golden age of cinema this year.
That's
It
pretty
feels like
cool,
a
though.
fantastic year.
That's pretty cool. You have a kid now.
Yeah, I mean, she's better than Dune 2. I can say that. Which that's high praise because Dune Part 2 was
Yeah.
really good.
Yeah, not much is.
And so it's just been trucking along and trying to just find where I can step in and make content, do stuff like this.
Well, I got
And,
good news for you. Those movies are still going to be there when you're ready for them, and they're still going to be good.
Yeah, that's true. Streaming has saved my butt. I didn't see Wonka till it came out on Amazon. And again, another good movie from this year. Well, it's kind of divided. Some people liked it, some people didn't. But yeah, and I just think that I had a feeling that this was going to be one of the better conversations about philosophy and stuff. There's something about the horror film community that really opens up real deep talk. You would never. People have this stigma with horror, and I know how important filmmaking is to the horror community as a horror novice myself and seeing it. And I'm really glad where this conversation went. And I wanted to just thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. This has been a blast.
Yeah. And so tell the people where they can find you, your platforms, what you're doing, projects coming up. Just sell yourself for a minute.
So everything I do is under the name Haunting Season. My short stories are still up on YouTube, free to watch. There's a ton of them. I think I have like 60 of them up on there. And there's a couple of short films too that I made way back in the day. I do the TikTok. That's the best place to keep up with me is either TikTok or Instagram. And then I have a Discord where I'm about to launch. We're going to do VHS movie nights. I found a way to stream my VHS tape through Discord so that we can all watch, and we're going to do VHS movie night on the regular in the Discord. Right now I have it through Patreon, and that money helps me continue to do the work that I'm doing to create short films and eventually features, but to also support the Discord community. But I think I'm toying with the idea of opening up just a small tier for free where people can just come in and watch the movies and have some general conversations. Because to me, the most important thing that I've gotten out of all of my work within the horror industry is building community. And I feel, especially with TikTok on the chopping block this year, I really feel like we are desperate to hold on to what we've built together, which is this incredible community. I've met some of my best friends through TikTok, and it is transcending the internet. I'm meeting these people in real life. And so I just want anyone who's interested in building a real horror community that transcends the internet to get involved, to at least follow me on TikTok and keep up with stuff. And if you're interested, the Discord is going to be available soon to non-paying members as well.
Awesome. And I will always, as always, I'll be putting those links down below. I'll put the links to all of his social medias and the Patreon as well. Get you some more of that Patreon backing. And so thank you again for coming on. This has been an amazing conversation. I have loved just discussing just film in general and what makes good art. And just thanks. I'm sorry this interview went a little long. But it was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. I'm happy to come back anytime.
Of course. Next time when we start repeating guests, you will be on the list. Go follow them right now. I want to thank all of our guests for being on the show again. You made this episode the biggest episode we have ever done. I also want to thank all of you who have been watching the show. I know that the posting has been a little inconsistent lately, but I promise there's going to be less time between episodes moving forward, and we got some awesome interviews coming down the pipeline. As always, you can find all the links in the description below. Have a wonderful night, and stay geeky, my friends.